Canada, did you have to extend the cruise ban for a whole year? Reaction from a Canadian. Hi there, I'm Ilana from the website lifewellcruise.com. Welcome back to my channel. Now, you have no doubt heard a lot of news about the cruise ban that is affecting Alaska as well as Canada, New England sailings. However, I've heard a lot of misconceptions, a lot of assumptions out there, and I wanted to give you my perspective from a Canadian. At the same time, I want to clarify some of the information as well as let you know some of the things that might be able to happen. Cruises are not actually canceled just yet, although I do suspect that is what's going to happen. However, there are some potential workarounds and even some cruises that you can still do in Alaska this year if you do want to. So I'm going to be going over all of that in this video up ahead. Now, before I get started, I wanted to mention if you do like the video, please do give it a thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And of course, please subscribe if you haven't done so already. So firstly, let's look at the cruise ban and the history of the cruise ban. So the cruise ban has been in effect for Canada since March 2020, basically when the pandemic started. Now, at that time, Canada also closed its borders with the United States, at least for driving in. We were actually able to still fly into the United States. However, recently, as you probably have heard, Canada has implemented very strict restrictions, travel restrictions for flights, making it extremely difficult for either residents of Canada or even visitors to come into Canada, and basically to discourage travel, especially at this point, until the next few months. Now, the cruise ban was due to expire in February 2021. Now, it's not a surprise that the cruise ban was extended. However, it is a surprise that it was extended all the way to February 2022. If you know a little bit about Alaska cruises or Canada, New England cruises, well, you'd know that cruises really don't sail in Canada past usually October, so the fall. Sometimes there is the odd cruise ship that still does sail in Quebec City, for instance, even into November, but usually about October, early November is about the end of the cruise season for Canada. So likely this will have either expired or will be rescinded before 2022. Now, I'm going to let you know what I think about the Canada cruise ban, and it might surprise you. But before I do, I want to just explain a little bit about, well, why the Canada cruise ban actually affects U.S. cruises, for instance, in Alaska. Well, that is because of something called the Passenger Vessel Services Act. And basically, this is often referred to as the Jones Act. And this is a U.S. maritime law. And what it does is it prohibits foreign flag ships, and cruise ships really on the most part are foreign flag ships, from leaving from a U.S. port and returning to a U.S. port without stopping in a foreign port. Now, the foreign port for U.S. cruises is a stop in Canada when it's an Alaskan cruise, for instance, leaving from Seattle. If it was a cruise somewhere else, for instance, if it was a cruise going to Hawaii, well, you would need to stop, for instance, in Mexico. So that would be the foreign port. Now, there is some controversy about this law. Some people say that it's outdated, it's antiquated, and other people say that it's actually very important because it protects U.S. maritime jobs, and as well that it's important for homeland security. So I'll let other people figure out if the law itself is very important, but we'll also talk about if there is a workaround for this law a little bit later on in this video. Now, I do want to say that besides the fact that, of course, it's very sad for people like you and me who want to cruise and we want to be able to travel, but probably more important, of course, the people who work on cruise ships, but as well for the communities in Alaska, for the communities in Canada. So for instance, like Victoria, BC, and Vancouver, BC, and all of the cities in Alaska, as well as the maritime provinces in Canada, this cruise ban definitely does have a devastating economic impact on all of these cities. But let's remember that for now, cruising is actually not allowed because the CDC has not given their approval for cruises to resume. So why did the government of Canada extend the cruise ban, especially so far out, knowing the economic impact? Well, what they say is that they are trying to protect the communities, the people who work at the port, the cities, and that is first and foremost the responsibility of the government. Now, I have seen it written in many places, well, questioning that and just saying that the timing of it, if we look at the vaccination rollouts, that things really should be much improved. And while I agree with that in general, this is where my Canadian perspective is going to come out. We have some very real things that are happening in Canada, and I don't think this has to do with the United States. I don't even think it has to do specifically with cruise ships. It has to do, well, with a couple of things. Firstly, well, that Canada has been discouraging non-essential travel. So the idea of traveling is just not important to the government of Canada. So even though there's economic impact, well, first and foremost, it is health and it is safety. And while that can seem noble, here's the second part. Well, the second part is the vaccine rollout isn't going really well in Canada. That's a reality of it. I wish it was going better. I'm really, really happy for countries where it is going better. I'm happy for the United States, which really seems to have this 100-day plan and things are rolling. I know they're not perfect. I'm happy for the UK and anywhere else where you are getting vaccines. But I do know I live in Canada. And I know this vaccine rollout, as my husband Frank says, is not even slow. It is a trickle. And that is to put it mildly. We are expecting in Canada that if things go well, the government of Canada has said that every Canadian who wants a vaccine will be able to get one by September 2021. So that definitely sort of explains why we can't really see cruising in Canada for at least the summer and fall 2021. And that's even a hopeful projection. So we are hoping that it actually gets to that point. Right now, we do have a supply issue, and that is a reality. At the same time, we have a strained medical system. We're not the only ones who have that. I mean, this last year has been so difficult on so many countries, and that's the reality for us here. So even though I'd love to see travel return, I'd love to see cruises return, I can't see how that's possible in, well, the way everything is. At the same time, the province that I live in, we have been in a lockdown for weeks now, since right around Christmas time. And we're living with an 8 p.m. curfew. We've not been able to buy anything other than essential items for several weeks now. So even like at our Costco, people will sometimes make a comment and say, have you seen Costco, how busy it is? It's not really very busy here because you can only buy food. You cannot buy non-essentials. Now, starting this Monday, February 8th, I'm so happy to say that we can finally buy some non-essentials. So that includes school supplies, and that includes gloves and winter coats, even though we're in Canada. So that is the reality of Canada. So cruises is just not the first priority. So I'm sorry to say, but I think that's the reality. Anyway, let's move on to other things. And that is there any workaround around this? Is there still a way for you to cruise or visit Alaska? And yes, there is. So is there a possibility of cruising or traveling to Alaska this summer? So of course you can always travel to Alaska, but if you are planning or hoping to cruise there, unless the law changes, well, it is unlikely that you would be able to cruise, at least with the major cruise lines, the larger cruise lines, to Alaska. But you do have a couple of options. But first, let me tell you about something from Holland America and Princess that I thought was really interesting. They have lodges where they usually have their land tours either before or after a cruise. They have that sometimes. So they have these lodges in Denali and in Fairbanks, for instance, in the interior of Alaska. And they say that they're committed to still have these lodges operating. So it will be interesting to see what they say, what proposals they have perhaps. So definitely look out for that. At the same time, those cruise lines, as well as other cruise lines, do say that they are in communication with the authorities, with the governments in Canada and the United States to see if there is anything that can be done. Now, if you do want to still cruise to Alaska on a smaller cruise line, well, there is Uncruise, which is really more like a large boat or a vessel. I wouldn't say it's like a grand cruise. It is really a smaller vessel that holds about 100 passengers and crew. And this can actually cruise in the Alaskan waters. The reason is that it is a U.S. owned company. They operate 6 vessels and they're U.S. flagged. So you can definitely look into uncruise, and there'll be some other small cruise lines as well that look like they could probably cruise in the Alaskan waters. Now, finally, the other possibility is to ask President Biden and Congress to actually have a pause temporarily on the Passenger Vessel Services Act so that cruises can leave from Seattle and go into Alaska without stopping in Canada. I know that probably Alaska would be very pleased with that. I don't know if the president would be apt to do that, or Congress, because I had heard at one point that President Biden said he did not want to overturn or to make any change in the Jones Act, but I don't know if he was actually referring to this in particular. So it might be a possibility. Now, in Alaska, there is an Alaska delegation of a couple of senators and a congressman who are actually asking for this. So please let me know if this is something that you think should happen. You can let me know in the comments below. And of course, if you think that this is something that you'd like to happen, then you can write to your local representative. So please let me know what you think. And if you're Canadian, please let me know if you agree with me on my perception of what is going on in Canada, because there's no, if you have a different perception, maybe you're living something different, that is absolutely totally fine. And do you think that Canada did the right thing or not? Please let me know in the comments below. Now, if you liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. I appreciate it so much. And of course, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, because I would love to have you here in the Lifewell Cruise family. Thanks so much for watching, and happy future cruising.